Liam Newitt presents Sorrow, Tale of Tears. A young boy lays still on the floor, slowly awakening after a deep sleep. It takes him just a short while to eventually open his eyes. He still lays on the ground, but slowly builds up to gain courage to get back up on his own 2 feet. Upon getting up, he eventually sees that he is in some form of unknown place. Things seemed rather dark, but with a slight blue hue just shining just to slightly light up this strange position he was in. It appeared that this young boy seemed to appear in some form of corridor. The corridor twisting and bending in his own vision. The young boy stood tall at an average height for an 8-year-old child. He slowly starts to make his move through the corridor continuing to bend and twist as he made his very moves. Once reaching the end, he slowly came up to a large door with some form of metallic piece in the middle. The metallic piece revealed some form of guy, some form of gentleman, formed just by the metal. The metal shined bright and silver. Yet this so-called picturesque detail within the metallic structure revealed an overweight man crying, with a crown on his head, some form of king, but no one was really known for what would happen in this so-called corridor. The young boy, Niall, he claimed himself to be, slowly led up to the door, using his hands gently tapping the door handle before slowly twisting it to open it. As the door slowly opened, it creaked, squealing loudly as it swung open from the slight draft. A slight feel of wind just scrubbed Niall's arm, giving himself goosebumps. His journey led on, now slowly stepping through the door to the other side. The door slowly closed again on its own, without Niall's touch. Upon leaving the corridor, Niall notices he's in some unknown town. But from the step of the town when he comes in, all he hears is strange noises. Noises of random people crying loudly, sobbing, loud shouting, screaming, and in some formations, even people trying to hurt themselves being observed in the distance. Upon realizing where he was, once reading a sign, the sign said one thing in its structure: "Welcome to sorrow." Niall was confused, not sure where to set up his next steps for where he should leave and where he should go. He moves his very steps to the next generation, taking his very slow steps bit by bit. Traveling onwards was just one way for him to move along. He was riddled in confusion, in questioning. Luckily, Niall had the chance to find a bench. He sat briefly on the bench, questioning himself for where he was, wondering why these strange noises were heard as he started to make his moves through this sudden town. But he wasn't sure what just was happening. Niall seemed very scared, his body shaking violently, his teeth chattering as he thought in confusion about this situation of where he would be. But no one knew exactly where he was or what was happening. It was just a strange place. No one would know where he was or what was happening. But upon realization, it seemed like Niall was stuck in some form of dream. But maybe not so much of a dream, more of a nightmare, from the strange noises around him. Niall starts to make his moves, gets up off the bench and starts to walk, trying to find answers to where he is. Though the town called itself Sorrow, there seemed to be some form of hidden ideas in the background that sort of hinted at some form of historical treatment, something that led this place into its feelings. Niall slowly makes a move and heads towards some random building, the building appearing to be some form of library. Upon entry, a librarian can be seen at the desk near the entrance of the building. He carefully asks to try find a book, to try know where he is, or some form of information leaflet to try find his way around this strange place. Niall was given a leaflet with a map inside of it, so he could easily find his way around the town. But upon other looks, he told the librarian about the situation with the strange noises and things. The librarian went into conversation with him, telling him that he's been like this for quite some time, but no one knows why. Niall asked if there was any formation of historical books, some form of way to find out what really happened to this place to end up into this so-called sadness he said was happening around him. The librarian kindly guided him towards the historic section of the bookshelves. Upon ending up at these bookshelves, he searched carefully, trying to find the title of this so-called town, Sorrow. He looked down till he reaches the section marked with the letter S, meaning all titles of any stories in this section would be titled at the start with the letter S. He checked and found a black book. The black book seemed to have been marked with the same exact appearance of the strange structure that he found in the corridor. The strange man crying with the crown on his head. "That's it," he said carefully to himself. "This is the book I need." Niall grabs the book and sits down at a comfortable table. The table, oak-coated, but the chairs seemed very comfortable, unlike any other chairs he had ever seen in any formation of other libraries, especially in his childhood. Schools, mainly. He waited, standing still, not knowing where he was or where he would be. He carefully opened the book and slowly started reading, discovering the history that was left behind. not knowing where things would be was just one way that things would lead him to. Niall was unsure, but the reading started. He opened the book, reading carefully, bit by bit, anything he could find to find out the so-called reasoning behind these strange noises. Upon reading, things went back to the past. Some form of man, some form of scientific investigator. No one really knew who this man was, but yet he claimed to be some form of investigator of many different places, in different places of the world. Some form of inclusive idea that no one would know who he was. This man was unknown from any form of registrations. A strange place, you must say. Not everyone knowing who things belonged to, as he stepped through towards the library on his own. His reading was very careful, checking out every bit just for the sake of it. The investigative man seemed to be on some form of journey to try make things very good, trying to raise profits and gain more money for different companies around different towns and cities that seemed to be upon some form of fall down. A town just abandoned by others in distance. It seemed strange, unlike any other situation seen before. Things were questioned. Focus briefly on anything in the mind and soul of other people. The silence. A different realm like any other was never done before. But yet the investigator just didn't know some of the things that he would cause during the investigations he must take to try gain things. Upon the investigations, it seemed like he was more of an invitation to some form of strange discovery, some strange investigation that would lead to inventions. The man called himself Hank Holmes, some form of man that would search to find different ways to gain profits from other things. But the investigation could have possibly led to the reasoning behind this scary but sad feeling that this town had brought. No one had known what would happen in the background. Yet all seemed to be true as Niall continued to read along. Hank Holmes was the man behind the invention of making sure that the town, originally known as Ferkelligan, some random town in the middle of nowhere, it seemed different than any other town in existence. It was not always very normal in mind and in heart. The horrifying discoveries of this place made Niall more concerned about what was happening outside. Why these people seemed to cry too many times, wondering just what was happening. Upon reading further through this book, Niall realized that something dark had happened in this town that led it into this sadness. It seemed like some form of fire happened within the town, many people dying with it. These so-called deaths could have led people into mourning, and even the crying and screaming of the dead souls possibly could have been heard as well, as if their spirits were lingering in their own homes. It started to make a bit more sense this time, to why this place was around, and why everything was discovered the same way. It seemed all different. Niall was happily able to continue reading on just a little bit more to try find out a little bit more information. Not really much was known or seen. but his journey must continue. It seems that things were just different. Timing seemed strange. He thought he would wake up in the start of the day, just before sunrise, usually getting to see the sun just peek out of the corners. But it didn't. It seemed that the so-called light of the morning just didn't quite fit in. Upon the exploration of this town, things seemed more dark, more spooky, as if it was stuck in the middle of the night. He didn't really know where he was this time, and why timing was completely different in this said place. Niall usually thought he would wake up quite early in the morning, usually around 5 a.m., but it seemed that this so-called darkness really left him in confusion. Why was this place so dark? Was time different in this place? He didn't really know the answers, and it seemed like the book just wouldn't tell anything about timing, especially daytime and nighttime cycles in this place. That usually wouldn't be in a history book. That would more likely be seen online. Not everything seemed normal in this place. Time was just a different thing. But Niall must continue on with his story and start making a move. He slowly stepped out of this library, moving back into town, just to continue on with his journey. His journey continued on quite briefly, and quite quickly. Not anyone was knowing what was happening in the background, just different feelings. Upon stepping out of the library, Niall continued his journey, trying to find possibly somewhere to rest, considering this place was stuck in the middle of the night. Despite him just waking up in a corridor, it felt like Niall was just stuck in some random dream. He didn't really know where he was. Things seemed rather scary or concerning to him. Being unknown in a strange place was just not normal for a child like him. Though this dream felt more like an out-of-body experience, as if possibly an adult body was escaping with a childhood soul, things just felt strange. The journey continued, though. Now finding somewhere to take a rest after such a long journey so far. It took him a few hours to walk towards the library after leaving that said corridor. His journey must continue, though, setting off to find a new place just for him to stay. Things were getting rather scary and rather creepy. He felt like it was a safe thing to find somewhere to stay for the night. Moving along, he was passing by shops. Security police members slowly started walking around the town, possibly asking troubled criminals to come with them if anything was dangerous for them. It seemed like Niall got caught under one of the policeman's eyes and started getting chased down. Upon the chase, he was eventually safe and locked himself inside a brief house in the middle of the town. He came in, door creaking open as he entered the home. He was running through the house, trying to find somewhere where he could sleep, eventually finding an empty bedroom. Upon looking around the house, it seemed more abandoned, as if no one had ever lived there before. Or may have lived there before, but it was no longer occupied. This house seemed strange, but Niall was willing to continue on and rest for the night. Upon the start of the day, things didn't quite mark up to mind. Upon waking up again, the place seemed like it was still stuck in the middle of the night, as if time had just frozen in position, appearing like it was just midnight and nothing had changed in time. He was unsure where he was, and his journey wasn't over yet. Upon waking up, however, he heard some strange noises within the house, as if someone had broke in overnight, though he thought he had locked the door before heading to sleep. He slowly creaked down the creaking stairs, grabbed a knife from the kitchen, and held it in his hand, shouting out that he was armed and dangerous, just in case anyone had broke in to try and hurt him. It was some formation of ways to keep himself defensed. He continued on and pushed forward, searching the house carefully with a torch in hand. Eventually, upon entering the living room, a shadowed figure seemed to crawl underneath a desk within the living room. Niall crouched down and looked under the desk, and what seemed to appear like a young figure seemed to stand there briefly, hiding in the distance. Niall slowly took a deep breath, stating, "Come out. It's okay. If you're not going to hurt me, I won't hurt you. It's okay. Please. Come out and show yourself. If you're not willing to hurt me, I won't hurt you. I'm just armed because I got a little scared. Show yourself. Show yourself now." Niall standing up was extremely commanding. Standing up for himself was just one place to be. His commands made this strange figure think carefully about their next move. Should they crawl out of the desk or stay there, just hiding? "Come on, please don't hide. I don't really want to hurt you. I was scared that someone had broken into the house. I can keep you safe if that's what you're thinking about. It's okay. Come on out and show yourself. Please." Silence lingered on, in question for where he would be. Places never knew where they would go. Niall waited patiently in the living room, but no movements were made. He was just sitting there, in the chair, briefly, before heading into the kitchen and grabbing a cup of coffee and drinking it, slowly, waiting for this strange thing to leave from its hiding spot, but no movements were made. Perhaps this shadow was just an illusion. Niall grabbed his torch and checked under the desk, and nothing was there, other than a figure leaving under the desk. Turned out that the figure was actually just a mouse. The mouse just making some loud noises as it's tried to find a way to hide away. Perhaps the mouse was just out in the open. Maybe some things just blocking the way led to the mouse making some loud noises. Niall jumped scared. However, he was briefly able to calm himself down again after realizing it was just a mouse. He carefully placed the knife back in the kitchen drawer before using his bare hands after washing them to pick up the mouse and lead it back outside. It's okay. I thought you were a human for a second. Come here. Let me take you out there. It's safe outside than it is inside. Mice are just strange. It's not really safe to be inside a house, he said to the mouse, slowly picking it up with a gentle grip. He carried the mouse out of the front door, placing it on the pathway of the street before locking the door again. Turns out the front door was actually unlocked when he checked before he ended up double locking the door. He was feared, scared that something else could break through the doors. Checking all the windows were also locked. He was confused to how the mouse found its way inside. But there was not enough time for investigating how the house was just infested by just one mouse. He wandered round the house, doing some normal routines, taking a shower, getting dressed, and heading back out to continue on with his journey. This time his journey was just to get himself ready, calling this house his home for the next few days as his ventures continued onwards. Niall just did some normal stuff for the day, heading to random shops. The security guard of one supermarket started to chase him down, however, in one of the stores, claiming that he wasn't allowed in there without parental permission. They chased him out, but he was quickly able to flee back to his home, leaving all the cash that he needed to pay for the items before leaving the door with the security guard. His run back home was very quick, speed of light, so he thought. Upon entering back to the home, the door seemed this time actually unlocked. Although he did lock the door once he left, this time someone had broke in. Maybe it was the mouse again, he thought, slowly. But just in case, he ended up defending himself again, this time with a hammer that was also found in a cutlery drawer. The drawer was rather strange, with a hammer stuck inside it. Holding the hammer up, he almost sounded creepy. Come out, wherever you are. I know you're hiding somewhere. Loud laughing and giggling could be heard within the house. This time it was a proper person that had broke in. Unknown, obviously, to who they were. Niall continued to question just where things were and where things were going. This time things were different than normal. A place so unknown that it was questionable for anyone to think where he could be and how things were going. I'm armed and dangerous if you're going to hurt me. Stop hiding and come on out, he said angrily. He seemed like it was an abrupt command in order to try to keep himself safe. No movements were made. He quickly headed upstairs briefly to the bedroom, placing all of his bedroom groceries up to his room. Mainly just deodorant, some toothpaste for the bathroom, and a couple of other things that a young 8-year-old boy would want for his bedroom. Upon getting ready to leave the room, it seemed like music could be heard from the room where the thing was hiding. The music seemed very familiar, however, like some form of song that his mother would tell him before heading to sleep, like some form of lullaby. Not everything was known. The window in his bedroom was open. The sound of birds squeaking and squawking in the distance. It had him afraid, wondering where he would be, but nothing was really known about it. It was a strange place for anyone to realize where he was. This time he was definitely armed and ready, hammer in one hand, and this time a gun was found in the pantry of the kitchen. Holding it by, he said, I'm definitely armed now. Come on out and stop hiding, or you will be hurt. This creature noticed what was said, slowly crawling out from under the desk, standing in front of him. The figure told him briefly to put his equipment down. He shouldn't be armed, they said. But it appeared that this journey would be different. The figure seemed more feminine, and this figure also appeared to be around about the same age as Niall, around 8. Upon questioning who she was, an answer was given. Stephanie, a young girl who was staying in the house. Niall questioned Stephanie briefly, and all the answers were revealed. Stephanie was trying to find a place to stay for the night, after again experiencing similarities to what Niall had recently been doing as well. Friendliness started to rise. Niall apologizing for the situation, telling them it was fine. He didn't really mean to try and hurt them. He was just scared. Stephanie understood. The night had just fallen again by the time that their conversation was over, so they decided to rest for the rest of the night. Stephanie was sleeping in the guest room, whilst Niall stuck in his own room. The night drifted on, Niall's eyes closing gently, falling back to sleep once again.